Welcome to Philly Coco presents Side Project Spotlight, episode 69. It's a developer's journey into making cool stuff. I'm Kotaro.
I'm Steve.
And I'm Aaron.
And we are Philly Coco, a Philadelphia-based Coco Heads community focused on Apple development. That primarily, but not exclusively, means iOS, Mac, tvOS, watchOS, and visionOS development. Philly Coco's true desire is to take you higher on your own developer journey. Whew. All right. Well, we are done with WWDC. We've probably watched all the videos, right?
Not all of them, but yeah, a lot. This is the third in our trilogy, the finale of our WWDC24 trilogy episodes.
Yeah. So the first was the preview. The second one was sort of the initial reaction to what came out. And this was kind of like this one will be kind of like we've managed to digest a fair chunk of the videos, at least I hope we did.
Yeah. I definitely watched a lot.
Through it, by the way. Yeah, I watched a lot. I don't know about you, Aaron.
Not as much as I like. I don't think I even got through a quarter of them. So you can tell me what are the highlights.
That's okay. You go down a rabbit hole. Like I watched an episode. I watched a video from like 2021, I think, because it was like a prerequisite for one of them this year, and it was so you go down a rabbit hole. You can never watch all of them. You should never expect to. There's a few that you definitely should watch, and then you kind of pick and choose depending on what your current situation is. And sometimes that does involve going back to previous WWDCs. But what I think is cool is that there's some episodes that are just very entertaining, and you get little tidbits sometimes in the videos that you don't get when you just read the documentation. So it is important to pay attention to the videos.
Yeah, jeez, yeah. Although I am getting used to 2x, so
2x
speed.
I do 1.25 because I don't want to miss things. 2x.
I initially I couldn't handle 1.5, and then for some reason I just put it on 2x because I was in a rush, and now I'm used to 2x. It's pretty absurd.
I think it depends on who's speaking and what they're talking about.
Yeah, it depends on who's speaking, because some people at 2x are speaking normal speed, and some people it's
Well, what's funny is
a chipmunk.
Yeah.
What's funny is one of them actually called me out on it. There's one towards the end is you can turn off 2x and look at these summary lists. I'm like, oh, you got me.
Really? What episode was that?
Oh, I'll have to find it. It's funny. It might be like a visionOS one.
Probably.
Don't quote me on that.
I haven't watched many of them. So I guess the goal today for this episode, if you're listening, is we're going to go over what we think of the themes, the vibe of WWDC this year. What is it Apple is trying to tell us? Read the tea leaves, whatever metaphor you want to use, and then we're gonna end it with some fun picks of some of our favorite videos for that may or may not be useful to you, but we thought were just good watches.
Yes. So I guess one of the questions in my mind is what do you guys think in terms of this general themes of what we should be what Apple was telegraphing this time?
Let's see. SwiftUI is definitely one, and Swift 6. Yeah. So they didn't they say SwiftUI is the best way to build an app?
Oh my goodness!
Isn't that so? Last year, didn't they say something like Swift is the best way, or they said something similar?
Swift is. I know I'm going to misquote this, but Swift is the best replacement for C++.
That too, really right.
And then the other one was you want to build an app, you want to build the best app experience, build it on native SDK.
Was that this? Yeah. So basically, Swift and SwiftUI, all the things. That was one major theme. So reading the tea leaves, it's not that hard in this case. It's don't invest your time in anything that's not Swift. Don't go making new. Well, you probably weren't making new Objective-C stuff, but even frameworks, maybe you should think about.
UIKit.
UIKit. I mean, it still gets updates and stuff, and it has. But I would seriously be looking at new features and everything in SwiftUI if at all possible.
They did actually have two sessions, which I completely skipped because I was like, what's the point? But I'm sure there's some juicy tidbits in there. It's what's new in UIKit and AppKit.
Yeah, they're not gone, but if you're reading the tea leaves, it's like that's the future. And what is that? What's that framework or doing cross-platform apps that was before SwiftUI? I'm
you mean
forgetting.
Flutter or
No. Apple. Apple has a whole thing for, you had to like multiple paths to picking getting your iPad app ported to Mac. What the heck was that thing called? Now everybody's screaming at us or listening.
That's a Mac specific framework.
It'll come to me. Apple.
Like a cross-platform Apple platform.
It was the framework for building cross-platform between iPad and macOS.
iPad and macOS. Catalyst.
Catalyst. That's it. That's the word Catalyst. So
I mean,
they don't mention Catalyst. They haven't mentioned that.
That was like a super a super duct tape for.
Well, what I'm saying is they did not mention that again. I don't think they mentioned it last year either. So it's I would say things like Combine even are probably not something you want to spend too much time making new code for.
Was there nothing any talks on Combine?
No, I don't think that. I think everything's Swift is Swift. Like concurrency now.
Okay, yeah, I'm on board.
So like that's since last year, and Swift 6 is going to be a long-term switch. They kept talking about the community switching over the new all the new concurrency checking stuff. And there's some good videos in there. We'll talk about that about how you would convert your code base and how to deal with different situations, because it can be a little tricky to get fully on board with the strict concurrency in Swift 6. But that is also something that they hammered a bunch of times. That they want everybody to be eventually on Swift 6.
This is the carrot year. This is the year where they're like, here you go. We're not gonna. It's an opt-in. Don't worry, your code will be fine. And then next year they're just like they're going to flip that switch. It's like, all right, now we're.
So I mean, they brought. I didn't see they brought updates to SwiftUI, but I didn't really look at them too much yet. There wasn't
some interesting ones.
Really, what was it? What did you see?
Custom containers was one key one.
That one, okay, I watched that one. That was good.
Yeah, that was kind of good. There were some enhancements to UI. There were more. It's hard to describe if they're SwiftUI specific. They're not SwiftUI specific, but like the zoom modifier.
Oh right.
Mesh gradients. There were a couple of like SCK specific. Not SCK. Like sort of like UI specific additions that make it easier to do much more. For lack of a better word, expressive types of animations and transitions and effects. Yeah. So those were like big elements in sort of like in some of the talks where there's a lot more emphasis on sort of more whiz-bangy kind of interface, and it's kind of interesting. Like I feel like this is going to be the year where there's an excessive amount of zooming transitions in all of our apps. As everybody just like uses that modifier to death.
Yeah.
It'd be hilarious if like you keep because now it's supposed to replace the push pop metaphor for like certain interactions,
for, like, collections of things in a grid.
Yeah, that would make sense. But like, could you imagine like zooming in on one and you open up a new grid and you zooming in on another?
I mean, maybe I don't know.
I could see that for like Netflix style apps. For sure.
Yeah. Oh, they do like Apple does seem to be their design language has been evolving towards just like grids of things, just like cards and horizontally scrolling things and grids of things, and less like traditional like table lists of stuff. Like you look at the App Store app. It's just like everything's a card and they zoom in and out. So
that is a good point. Now that I think about it, I'm trying to think of like apps right now. What are the popular apps? There are like third party. So there's Instagram. Generally, I have not used it. So I'm trying to think of like when was the last time I saw like a generic list item aside from like opening up the settings app or opening up a settings page, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't think I just see much emphasis in that kind of experience anymore. So.
Yeah, they didn't change everything to look like visionOS though, like some predicted.
They didn't, but they did. It's kind of subtle.
What did they transition? You mean is it the iPad floating tab bar?
There's a little bit of that going on. There's also like, but that's kind of like a weird, like it's they've turned the tab bar into like a segment control, if you know that metaphor.
I don't know how I feel about that whole thing. I'll have to use it to see if I like it, but it's a little weird.
It's only because, like, if you think about it from like a user experience point of view, so like if I'm holding my hand up, and like if you're doing like a one hand gesture, and Joe Japlinski kind of reminded us, like, you're using, like, everything you handle is mostly on the bottom, like the lower 2/3, especially with those bigger phones, 2/3 of the app, right? 2/3 of the screen. And the top 2/3, you require kind of like using your other hand to do that part, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like one of those things where that interaction doesn't, putting the tab bar at the top doesn't make sense for those interactions. But for iPad, that may be less of an issue, right? In fact, that's actually the opposite. That's almost like an inversion of like, oh, you probably should put those type of controls at the top, where the contextual kind of this goes back to sort of like a graphic design thing, where you're trying to like have a hierarchy of data organization of your content, right? So it should be like, this is my app at the nav bar level, and maybe like even at the context of where you are level, and then this is like all the sub, these are actions, these are actionable items to go interact with your sub tabs or your sub data sets, right? And then it kind of goes into like, okay, here's what's in that sub tab. So it kind of makes sense in that context. So you're not like having to like have this weird mental disconnect of looking down and looking up, looking down at your screen, and then looking back up into the middle.
Right? And the visual language does seem reminiscent of visionOS a little bit, that particular control.
Yeah,
it's like a floating thing,
Yeah, it's kind of like in the middle,
or like tvOS maybe more. It's there does seem to be some convergence of the visual language, but it's not. It doesn't seem to be explicit.
Yeah, it's not as well
like inspirations. You can see kind of inspirations maybe, but it's not like they like Apple seemingly has decided that everything must look like Vision Pro or tvOS or something. It's just there does seem to be some cross pollination happening, but it feels a little ad hoc to me. At least
I 100% agree. I feel like that's a really weird design choice, especially when you have like the interactions with like this converts into a sidebar nav and you have more data, right? And
it's
then,
like experimental UI design, but released to the world in an API they have to support forever. So it's weird. But so Swift and SwiftUI, all the things definitely up there.
Yeah.
And you were saying you also think a theme was that Vision Pro is not dead, I guess.
Well, I mean, how many? I mean, if we looked at like how many like Vision Pro videos they had at least for WWDC24 visionOS, they had at least, I'm just looking at it right now, certainly way more than, certainly in the range of like 20 plus.
visionOS is still the future. Apple still sees it as that.
Yeah. So it's not as if like normally the way we would be able to tell as app developers if a tech is dead, right? Is like, let's say, for example, or like Apple does not want you to care about it as much anymore. Like Combine would be a good example, right? There's like 0 sessions on Combine this year. But if you look at, or that's just not the point of emphasis they want you to care about. So, you could still use it. It's just, Apple's not going to care about it.
Right.
That was the same way I understood like SpriteKit was dead in their eyes, in terms of like, okay, they're not really going to push this any further.
Yeah.
Versus like, at least for this year, you can be assured that there's going to be much more things that Apple's going to invest in for visionOS. There's like, and knowing that there's 24 sessions of just content committed to visionOS means like, okay, we've got at least a good runway.
They named the update 4 months after, about 4 months right after the release of Vision Pro, they named the OS update 2, visionOS 2, which is, a big, it's just kind of a marketing thing, but it's also, I think, also a statement that like we're going to keep moving this forward. It's not just a point release. This is version 2. Next time is going to be version 3. It's kind of, I think it's a subtle, display of commitment to the platform. And I mean, of course it is. It just came out, so I didn't expect them to not be committed to it. But it does seem like a lot of the media attention has died down now. The attention in Apple stores maybe has died down. At least it's pretty easy to get an appointment or a walk-in to check it out. Yeah. They're expanding it to other countries now. Yep. So it's I think the issue is that Vision Pro came out, made a huge splash, and it was still very niche. I mean, it is very niche, intentionally so, and just necessarily so because of the state of the hardware and the software. But Apple is still putting huge amounts of effort into it. So I don't have one, so it makes it kind of difficult for me to invest a lot of time in exploring it. But I also think we have a long runway with visionOS. And Apple seems, and if your rumors are to be believed, Apple seems to have basically switched all of their attention to a cheaper Vision Pro type headset. Sure. So I think that they're in the long game with the visionOS stuff. It's going to be a long time. I wonder though, if it takes a long time to get a lot of market penetration, are they going to start taking stuff from visionOS and like, is it going to start influencing iOS more and iPadOS more? I mean, it's already, I think, a little bit, but like, is it going to be more explicit? Yeah. Is everything going to because I think there was an idea that floating around in the community that it was Apple's going to kind of converge the design language, like the new design language for going forward, like iOS 7 refresh kind of thing was going to be in the vein of visionOS, but that didn't happen this year. But I could see it kind of going that way in the future because Apple does like some kinds of consistency with their.
I mean, it would be hilarious if you start using circle icons.
Well, that was the thing. Everybody was like, "Yeah, what are we gonna do with circle icons?"
You know, I was like, "Oh, but we just stole that from Android." So.
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna do circle icons on the Springboard.
I wouldn't put it past them, but I think just because like we've literally stolen like 9. Like, I feel like when we were watching the WWDC keynote. We were like, okay, we sure like that from Android. We sure like that from Android. We sure. I mean, Sherlock is not necessarily the right term in this case, but like we definitely stole a fair share of ideas. And it's kind of interesting that in this case, it'll be fascinating to see how Apple goes, you know what, we're gonna allow for tinting of the app as an example, right? All apps have to be, if the system says this all apps have a tint of green, guess what? So, your app comes along for the ride whether you like it or not.
Is this another theme? Like I don't know what we would call this, like designers are no longer in charge. Like, is that the theme? Like, because that whole app tinting thing, I mean, that has really upset a lot of designers. I've seen, like, I was looking at the conversations on X and other places, and it's like a lot of these designers are upset about this because it does allow the end user to just muck up the their icons.
They're beautifully designed. I think what's interesting is, like, I'm not sure why that they would be. I would challenge that they should be excited about that opportunity as a designer, because here's a situation where you're giving your control back to the user to sort of help, because the thing, that didn't come out of a vacuum. That's the idea, right? I mean, forget about stealing the Android. Market. Right. It was responding to a specific niche.
I mean, another way of saying this is like Apple is further empowering users, but now like in the look and feel of the operating system, you know.
I mean, it is a little bit weird, but there is a subculture of people that just love to customize their home screen.
You know, I said, I saw that trend happen. I said, this is cool. How do you do this? And then I looked into it. I'm like, it's too much work. I'm not doing that. Yeah. You have to create individual shortcuts for everything you want to change your icon on, and then change the icons, and you have to download the icons. You do every single thing manually one at a time. And I cannot believe people just, they had to get like blank icons or something, right, in order to space things. I was like, oh my God, that is so much work. But a lot of people do it, and it's been huge, and people sell all kinds of icon packs and themes and such, and you set them up, and now Apple is making a very rudimentary entry into that. It lets you get some of the things you might want to do. Like, I kind of want everything colored a certain way, and they gave the option to have better dark mode icons automatically, which I think is nice. And of course, rearranging things, which is a big one.
Yeah.
And
I could probably assume like pastel colors are going to be hot. You know, or like if you're into like that cyberpunk space, you can do that. And and for an app developer, it's relatively straightforward to do. It's no different
app
from
icon.
To do like, it's like another settings in your app icon settings where you just add like, okay, I'm going to support tint mode. Right. And then you say, okay, and then you just apply like a base like white version of your app icon, with the alpha channel in it, and that's it. You know?
Well, the objection, I think, is some designers were saying it's poorly implemented. It's bad, and you can't make it look good. And I think that's a little bit extreme of a perspective. I find the
just a scooch.
I find like the extreme overreaction to stuff online now is just like so common. But the idea that like, I don't understand getting mad at Apple allowing people who, you know, have a phone to just change the colors. Like why do you care so much about what somebody does to their own phone? I don't get it. I understand you put a lot of effort into your brand, into the brand design and the icon and stuff. But at the end of the day, it's somebody else's phone. I mean, they can mess with it if they want to.
I think the brands are probably more so the bigger companies, right, that have to have the brand identities. When that's sort of like removed from them, I think that's what scares them. Designers. I think the designers themselves, you know, with the loud minority, I would say.
Yeah, it's definitely like a minority.
Probably is excited about the opportunity. I think that's
a psychologically helpful perspective, to be excited about an opportunity, to look at it in a positive sense, not to like screech like you're, you know, lost your mind.
And isn't it better as a designer to have your icon just like tinted rather than completely replaced by a shortcut?
That's a good point, Aaron.
Yeah.
Maybe that is actually what Apple was thinking, and that's why it's kind of it seems like an awkward thing. But you're like, well, the alternative is making it easier to swap the icons, which they haven't. Right. As far as I know, they haven't made it any easier. Like, you still got to go into shortcuts and do it in there, right, to swap the icon entirely.
You know what's funny is like some apps are really good about giving you the feeling like if you swap an icon,
that's an awkward,
you do it in the flow. You can do it in the flow of like if you can do something where it's almost like a reward system. Like, you accomplish something, you get this app icon, and you can set it immediately. I've seen that example. I thought that was actually pretty clever.
Oh, I wish that with the API for it though is like awkward. The swapping icons thing. Did they change that? Did Apple change that at all? Is it still the same awkwardness because it's not integrated into this system? Because that would make sense if it was. Because if you could, you know, choose alternative icons more easily, like from the springboard or something, that would be nice.
Yeah, that would be an interesting thing, because like that completely destroys like 90% of your app icons.
But if Apple made it easier to choose alternative icons that the developer included, because as far as I know, you still got to go into the app and find some, you know, screen to do that on, right? It's not like it's not a built-in way.
No, well, I mean, you can do it in a way so that like as you accomplish, think of it like a rewards. For like, I don't know.
You the developer have to create a flow. What I'm saying is, I don't think Apple added any operating system wide interface like they did for other stuff. You know, which I think is a little bit of a missed opportunity here, because they already have this kind of awkward way to switch app icons that are designed and
I guess it would
included
be kind of interesting
bundle.
Yeah, it would be kind of interesting, because it should technically know upfront which ones are your alternate app icons in the P list. It should actually allow you to be able to set it in the settings.
In the settings of the operating system settings, or does it though? I don't think it does.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
That's what I mean. Like, why not?
But it could. That's right. To the point, right? Like that should be an option that you should be allowed to do.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Apple's evolution on some design concepts. I talked before about you can go back and find the WW video about hamburger menus, and now they're like giving you hamburger menus essentially, and they talked about, I think in the past, about app icons and how they're distinct between the platforms, and now they kind of becoming more of a homogenized icon graphic mess in some ways. Like Mac OS icons just don't look as nice anymore, in my opinion, from the era where they were more skeuomorphic and. Everything's just there's just like a design trend that even Apple has gotten on board over the years, and it's and I could see from a designer perspective being that like this is like another step in that, like let's make everything look the same and boring and I could see that kind of perspective if I was trying to design cool icons and stuff. It's like, well, what the heck, Apple? Why are you getting in my way of making good stuff?
That's actually an interesting pseudo segue in the sense that I watched the SF Symbol 6 talk.
Okay.
And it didn't, like they were saying how these are how, this is what's new. You can add these different opacities and shadings and effects and animations now
cool. I didn't check that. I gotta check that out.
It's very customizable, and this is what you can do for your own custom icons. And I knew that was a thing. That maybe like from 1 to 2 years ago already in SF, and I was like, who's going to put their own custom? Who's going to spend the time putting their own custom icon in SF Symbols?
I did it. I did it for one. It was a pain in the butt.
Right. That's my point, right?
But I needed it. It was like I needed one.
But I was thinking to myself again. I was like, oh, if I put it in there, I could probably get a lot of that. Those the animations I'll get for free. And then B, the way to access them is all through SF Symbol. So you'd be doing what, like system name, and then you have the enumerations already built in. Do they do enumerations?
Yeah.
Is that in the system? Okay.
Actually, I don't know. I thought that might have been a new thing. I'd have to look. Okay. It needs to be done.
It needs to be done. But,
okay. This is I think there's been a long-term trend of Apple kind of, how do I put it, is like empowering the end users and empowering developers to produce apps that are for developers to produce apps that don't look like complete garbage. So like they're providing more kind of automated and commoditized design assets and concepts, and like SwiftUI itself makes choices. It makes design choices for you if you just follow the defaults. And then SF Symbols gives you every year more and more symbols to use for buttons and things, and then they add animations and colors and all these effects. And as a developer, you can just tap into these things and use these things. And if you follow the guidance that Apple gives you, you generally end up with something that looks pretty good. It's not going to win a design award, but it will be decent looking and functional. And it's kind of like, I feel like a long-term trend of I don't know how to say it. It's like empowering, to be positive about it. It's empowering developers and people and other non-designers, but also kind of pushing like the full-time designers a little more into the back seat. Like you're not as necessary anymore if you're, to make a functional, decent-looking app, you don't need necessarily a full-time designer who just designs, layouts and icons and stuff anymore. But of course the quality difference of the design is going to be great. But like if your goal is something functional that doesn't look like garbage, you can do that never talking to a designer, as long as you follow some basic guidance, mostly that's in the documentation from Apple and the HIG, I think.
Yeah, I think especially if you're specific to the Apple platform.
Yeah.
And your resources are limited, I think that's actually...
Well, Apple doesn't care about other platforms.
Well, I know that, but
their universe, you're only working on Apple stuff.
Like if you're like a one developer that has to support that app, or
which
if
is
you're like
which is
a
me.
small team.
That's my life. So I appreciate this stuff because of that. I've worked with designers in the past, and then a lot of times it's just me. So it helps that because I have to put on the designer hat. It helps to have these kind of scaffolding and the support from Apple. It's like, here you go. Here's something that will look decent to start with, and then you can tweak it and stuff, but you don't have to make a whole new bespoke design to make something decent.
But that was sort of one of those things where I thought, oh, I didn't even see this, but is Apple's way of like suggesting I move all my icons that are more design system specific or like our own thing and figure out a way to convert it into an SS symbol, a custom SS symbol.
I thought that was a thing that they were pushing a long time ago. Like, it makes sense. Once it's in there, once you have a symbol like that, it's a lot easier to use it in your app.
It is, but it's also like a real pain to maintain, right? Because you have to update that symbol.
You got to update the symbol document thing. I mean, I've only done it once, and I don't know if it's any different. I cannot even remember how I did it. Frankly, I don't even quite remember.
It's not like slapping it into the asset folder and making sure you have like the basic parameter set, right?
There was some template I used to take it and make sure it was like you had to make different sizes, and you had to line because you had to line them up in different because it's a typographic thing, so you have to make sure everything's lined the way you'd want it to be. And anyway, there's like a minimum set you had to create in the I can't remember, but you had the design again. People yelling at us. You had I created some document thing and then it worked, but and it's fine. I use it for like a tab bar. I mainly as the reason I needed it, and it works great. And it's a lot easier than in the past where I had to have like some custom like PNG file for wherever you want to use it. And then,
one thing that I had noticed, kind of going off a different segue, which we're wonderful at, in the Vision OS section, I've noticed there's a lot of emphasis on using shader graphs, using Reality Composer. Like they've beefed up Reality Composer considerably since the last time, and they strongly recommend you start leveling up your shader graph knowledge. It's kind of funny because I'm looking at it and I'm going, there's so much emphasis this year on trying to utilize and particularly utilizing the shader graph workflow. So there's like talks about prepping your 3D assets with Reality Composer, Reality Converter, blenders mentioned. This is a lot of primarily around 3D stuff. Using object capture in better ways, using CreateML to like generate these assets. Is it CreateML? I think it is. Yeah, to like take baking these 3D assets, so you can use in your app how to optimize your topologies on the assets so they're less, and they're even saying like your environment, right? If you have an environment that's 3D, what the poly count should be. Like they're really all in on this idea of like building immersive spaces in 3D.
3D is the future.
It is. In this case it is.
Yeah.
And so I think last year they had at least 2 to 3 courses around maybe 3 to 4 actually around integrating with Unity. But this year Unity was sort of like maybe like a bullet point, but it wasn't necessarily like a feature. Like
they too much drama. They're radioactive now.
They sort of given up on this idea, like, okay, like, you'll probably use Unity to build these things, but and the experience, but like we can't trust them. So
I mean, it has to be because of all the drama, right? Because
I mean, they even have a way so that if you have a game that, let's say you built it in Unity and it's in 2D, you can actually still build an immersive space in 3D and like kind of do all your stuff outside the screen. In like its immersive 3D space and kind of get your cake and eat it too kind of situation. So you can still play your game as if you're playing it in immersion mode. It's just imagine if you're doing like your watching like an HD movie or whatever, an IMAX movie ish type thing.
Yeah.
But now any game developer can bring their games over, port their games over, so to speak, not have to spend too much time about building like a bespoke experience. You can integrate a lot of more basic stuff, like maybe a HUD in Vision Pro, or like some extra like metadata. Like, how like sometimes you have to go into the menu items in games and like pick your, like, let's say like Elder Rings or like one of those like role-playing RPGs where you have to like pick your inventory item.
The last game I played, I think, was the Cowabunga pack with
Teenage
Turtle
Mutant
games
Ninja
from
Turtle?
the 90s.
So like maybe it would be cool, like instead of having your stats in the game or in the screen of the game, you can have it like on the side.
Okay.
Or if you have like a multiplayer experience, you can even built in multiplayer chat or share play kit. You can like get that kind of experience working. That actually is a reasonable, like sort of like until developers kind of get a better understanding of the general workflow for Vision Pro. I think that like Apple is kind of forced to just say, okay, we're gonna baby step our way into this until either Unity gets their act together or some game engine
Godot
is actually a reasonable option actually.
Or Godot.
In about
Godot. It's Godot.
I mean, I'm a big Godot fan, but I think like even I know like okay, Godot is not arguably it's even desktop ready, right? It's an open source game engine that's building momentum, but it still needs at least 2 to 3 years before like mainstream game developers like catch on.
Is the 3D stuff that's being pushed, is this going to in some way filter to the 2D platforms like iOS and iPadOS? And how do you see that working? Did you get any kind of tea leaves about that? Because visionOS is great, but again, it's going to be a while before, maybe never before it's like that's the primary platform, but before it's a bigger platform that everybody has.
It already has to a degree, but I think one of the interesting things, I think a talk, speaking of like interesting talks, I don't have it on my list, but I just watched one called Quicklooks. So Quicklooks is like generically speaking, you open up a Finder. It's like a great way to see your preview of the content inside your app. Right. So now you can build your own preview inside the app. So in a lot of cases, like say, for example, like a file, let's say you have a grid of 3D assets, and normally that would be a pain to do because you would have to like put a view with Scene Kit inside each one. That can't be optimal at all, right?
No.
But Preview will allow you to do that. Will allow you to just have like a 3D, like a grid of your 3D assets for which then you can tap into, and it'll open up the actual USDZ file, which then you can rotate and spin and do all sorts of interesting things with it.
What's a real world application of this?
Let's say a product.
That's what I was thinking.
Let's say a shoe. Let's say a shoe app, right?
That's a good example. People do love shoes,
right? You kind of want to see the whole, like you want to see what's inside the sole. You want to see the bottom. What do you call that? Is that the bottom?
I want to see what kind of tread is on the bottom of my shoe because apparently I'm incapable of walking on slippery surfaces. I'm always told this. I look ridiculous. I'm just being careful.
But one of the things is like it has all the built-in features of when you preview a USD file, right? So you can spin, rotate, and like look at it at all angles, but you can also place it in the 3D, in the AR environment, right?
Really?
In the environment of your camera. So like, and then is
that part like included in? Do you have to build? Do you have to build like a bunch of code for that to work, or is it kind of an automatic thing?
In that case, it's more or less automatic. Yeah,
that's really because isn't that how the Safari thing works? Whatever that's so it's so that's basically now you can build that in your app easily if you have an asset in the right format.
Right. And I don't know necessarily if you can do the rotate. I don't think you can rotate it inside. It's inside the grid mode.
No, because you would walk around it, wouldn't you?
Right.
Because it's
right.
If
but
it's
you
AR.
Right, but you only need one asset. Right. You only need.
That's cool.
You don't need to like create a screenshot of that asset and then put that in the grid.
Oh, okay, I gotcha. That is
you just bring it up. It's like here's my array of I think they call it entities, but like an array of things that for which then you can point as not entities, but you point to it and it opens it up.
And product photographers you can hear them screaming out in agony and going silent. It's a thing like in the force. It's because what's the point of why be a product photographer now? People are just gonna make 3D
you can
scans.
Get it. You can actually do it like
what about that visionOS thing? If they take that visionOS thing where you could take a photo, make it a 3D photo. You could take any photo and make it a 3D-ish photo thing. That actually could be a nice in-between thing as well. Because then you need a good photo for it to work. But I'm just saying, we keep automating away all of the creative photography and type jobs. I get that. it's increasingly
like,
small number of people who are like really expert that get any of the work now.
I feel like there'll always be a new niche or new.
Yeah, I know. Obviously, I'm joking. I mean, it's like it's just fun. It's just I'm just thinking about it. I'm like, I remember some years ago watching like some YouTube photographers, and the way the guy made money was with product photography. And I've seen some videos on how to do product photography well, like in interesting ways. And I'm just like, well, I just see like who would be hiring you to do that? A brand that has a whole bunch of stuff to take photos of, like, I don't know, like a shoe brand. But now you just need somebody to take 3D scans of them all. So you don't need like proper, photography necessarily. You just need the scans of the shoes. That's not entirely true because you probably still want photos of people wearing them and stuff like that. But then again, you could probably just piece all that together in some other automated way. Anyway.
One thing that I'll never understand very well or as well as a product photography is like how to set up the proper lighting, right?
No, that was the thing I was watching about. The guy was explaining the lighting. It's like, the lighting is a thing, and it depends on what kind of product photography you were doing. Whether you want to have like everything lit like the white room thing, or whether you're trying to keep it in like an environment, have mood lighting, and
whether or not you want reflections and how you want those reflections to come in.
What other things are in the shot, and textures, and there's a lot of choices you make in photography. I'm just saying, like if I'm going cheap. I don't know. Maybe if I could scan everything. It's not cheap to scan stuff, though. I mean, you still need the way that stuff gets done is usually some kind of machine, right? With like a camera rig that semi-automates it. But you still need a lot of work involved to scan every single thing.
Well, in the case with if I was just basing it off of generally like if you're doing it vanilla, you would need like a round table for which you like take that camera and like scan it around the like a dolly or like a round table, like a spinning round table that you can like rotate the thing, or you had like cameras on all the end.
There's got to be rig. There's got to be like companies that make specific.
Yeah. But then that's very bespoke. You need people who understand how to set that up. So
but you only need like the one guy who understands how to do that, and then the capital investment, and then now you have a whole bunch of 3D assets that apparently starting in iOS 18 you can just plop in your app and everything is a 3D thing. You can see it can look at your shoes on your table. Because that's how you examine shoes, by putting them on your table.
And I think that's the part that that's the part that I don't think like people in the product business is paying as much attention to, at least as far as I can tell, right? Like you need to train up a new generation of people who can understand how to build, how to process 3D your product or whatever it is, and then build a 3D asset and then make it optimized so that when I, as the user, download your asset, it doesn't take effing forever. So
doesn't the Amazon app have like an AR thing in it for stuff, an AR view in it?
I would hope so.
I'm trying to remember. So like I've used this in different apps before. I gotta say, I think it's really useful for a lot of types of products, just to be able to see an AR 3D version of it. Just to get a sense of scale. So it's super useful for furniture, obviously. And, but anything like, you want to know how, like you go on Amazon, you want to order you want to look at some trinket or something, or you're like, how big is this thing? Sometimes it's not clear how big anything is and or how it's going to look in your environment. I think this is an untapped area. I think you're not only going to need to train people to build it, you're going to need to train customers. And so that's why I think it's increasingly going to be common.
I mean, if we're talking about a whole new...
Amazon since 2017 or something to be able to do this.
From a creative skill set of, the 21st century, whatever you want to call it, the next generation, right? Like, understanding how to do shaders would be probably one thing.
Yeah.
Understanding how to make and maintain and optimize 3D assets would be another. Understanding how to build them would be another. Game development skills are going to be really necessary going forward. Not because you build a game per se, but because you need to build the 3D environments and interaction for how you interact with those spaces. And again, this is not something that you're going to be worried about for at least another 1 to 2 years, but within 3 years' time.
I got to get my game development skills on then. You're going to have to give me a crash course.
Sure.
We're going to hire culture. You can make some money on this. The crash course. It
doesn't necessarily have to be like games. It's just understanding 3D, like spatial. I hate that term, but like spatial experience.
Spatial computing.
Yeah.
I mean, instead of saying 3D is the future, basically Apple's theme was like spatial computing is the future, people.
Yeah. Yes, because you're now building elements within a 3D space, regardless of like if you're interacting with your glasses or your
even on
goggles
your phone, or even increasingly on your phone. That's what I'm saying. Like, if this stuff it is filtering to the other more 2D based platforms, and because
we're just
which makes sense.
I mean, understanding like object detection, and we haven't even talked about like anything AI specific.
Oh yeah. Actually, before we should, because the other vibe that we just have not talked about, because we talked about already, we'll just mention it was the AI, all the things, I guess.
Right, but what's funny is like we couldn't do anything about it. I think
we can't do anything
like,
about it. That's the
like
thing.
there are like SDK things related, like what's it, Jamoji or stuff like that. Like you can integrate your own Jamoji into your app, but like that's not available. So there's no point in trying to figure it out.
Well, I will say the AI, all the things theme. That was half the talk. We talked about this already, so we're not going to go all into it again. But the app intense talks were kind of useful. The idea of
actually
the that's probably the biggest theme. Obviously, that besides the Swift and SwiftUI of everything, this was probably the other biggest theme was the new Siri, the new AI, the new like again. You've talked about this before, Kotaro, about pulling at, and they even said this in one of the talks I saw. They bringing. I think it was from bringing your app's core features users with app intents, but like you're trying to surface features in your app up outside of your app into parts of the operating system. Either, and this is not a new concept. The app intents and other kinds of frameworks have been around, but this year, man, did they update this framework and for the LLM future that they're building, and it's pretty cool. If it works as advertised, it simplifies your code for creating this stuff, and it allows. It's going to allow users to use much more natural language to get your application to be part of whatever workflow that user is trying to do in like a Siri interaction, as well as the other app intent stuff, which just surface things in search and widgets and stuff like that. So lots of new app intent stuff today because it gives you widgets, it gives you I guess Siri stuff, it gives you control center buttons, like that's widgets, like everything is a widget, an app, and everything is an intent. It's very cool. They use some macros are involved in this too, and that help you clean up your code. I haven't watched all of them yet, but AI, all the things.
I so want those macros. I think you can backport some of it, but like,
which macros are you talking about?
The entry one, and there was another one. There was a preview specific one, and then I was like, oh yeah. Although nowadays I've learned to work around, but like the preview state one was like, oh yes, please give me that one.
But you're gonna have to, and I mean you've been saying this for a while, but Apple's really pushing it now because now they're promising, and we'll say they promised this for how many, like a decade plus now, that Siri will work. But if it works, this will be the first time, like I think that people might actually use Siri to try to do things besides set a timer or something. And you're getting
the only thing I really use it for. Timer and like the alarm clock.
If it works as advertised, it's like this really might be worth it to do the app intent work to surface features, which means you have to build your application to be able to do that, to be able to surface that stuff.
I think one of the things that I've like as a user, it's tough to really know when it comes up, right? Because I think I saw ChatGPT had one where you open up your app search and it gives you the option to say, hey, just do a voice command. Along with you can open up the app, or you can just directly open up the voice command part of that feature.
Right.
It gives you like those two options. The other one, but there's a lot of like little mini opportunities for app developers to allow users to deep link into their app.
Right.
So I think that's the hard part for like when I tell this idea to product owners, or
it's hard to do deep linking.
Yeah, well, it's sometimes. It's so funny because like they're still stuck on this like in-app world, right? So like every designer that I've talked to, like a lot of them don't think about widgets, or just don't have the bandwidth to think about widgets. A lot of them don't think about like the dock screen. What does that mean? Where are the opportunities, right?
Right.
Think about Siri intents. They don't think about it's like, oh, that's too hard, or that's just not visually appealing, or whatever the excuse is, but like, it's like, hey, you've just wasted an opportunity to lock in the widget's case, lock this huge screen that you can like put as like that takes over like half the screen of your product, or for your app, right? Your brand is slapped there on the home screen that somebody proactively puts there and keeps there, right? And you can, and that was like it's a wasted opportunity in my mind, right? And it's like, well, it's not cross-platform. It's like, no, you don't have that excuse, because Apple steals like 90% of the stuff now from Android. So there's always going to be, might be off by like 1 year, but there's always going to be like a cross application opportunity there, regardless of what programming language you use, in terms of feature sets. Like, those are things where like your app can creep in different ways, and gives the user opportunity, versus like having to search for your app icon every single time, which Apple and Google are proactively trying to discourage.
Yeah.
They hide it in a drawer, they're moving it out, like they're not, you can put it as a home screen, but it's almost like a glorified shortcut at that point.
What is nice about Apple's approach is they're not saying, like, some people on the internet are like, you're not going to need software anymore, you're just going to have an AI chatbot do everything, which is ridiculous. Apple's like, hey, look, you're still going to need to make a good app. You're still going to need to have a good app experience. People are going to go into your app to do things, but they're going to come into the app sometimes by launching it, other times by some other operating system mechanism that surfaces that feature. So you still need to do a good app, but now you gotta think about the specific tasks. And this is how you always should have done software design anyway. Like, you got to think about what is it that the user's trying to accomplish, the goal, the problem being solved. And now you're kind of slicing it up into these intents to provide a way for the operating system to know about them and to interface with them. And then users are then kind of funneled into it. Now, sometimes they're funneled directly into your app. Sometimes they're just they're shown like a view that you present, like in the Siri interface. Sometimes it's just text. It's like audio, like Siri will be talking or something. And all of these things, though, you have influence on as an app developer and designer. And I think but it doesn't mean that you don't build a good app. It's not like you're not just building like little snippets or something. And Siri is not some like all in. It's not like a chat. It's not a chatbot interface. Like, that's the thing that's so nice, I think, about the way that Apple seems to be designing. Again, it all depends on how it works in practice, but the way they're designing it is something that should allow you to get that goal that Siri always promised. And so your app can participate in useful activities for users. And you know how valuable that would be? Like, if a lot of ifs, but if Apple can train users and to use Siri the way that they demoed to try, and it works, which is a big if, because it's kind of hard to discover this stuff. But if we could figure out a way of doing it, then that could make your app could become much more valuable for people, because you could just quickly access things. And they emphasize this a lot, and we're in the app intents about how you're trying to bring up the features up there, so users don't have to like jump in and like look around. So I don't know what we call it, AI and Siri integrations, whatever. Like, this was a huge theme, was half the talk, and it's half the like the keynote. And it's not exactly new, but the emphasis is very intense, obviously, because they want everybody to do this, so they have stuff to show in the fall or next year, I guess. When I think it's more like next year when a lot of the stuff is going to be available. I don't think any of the the Siri like app intense stuff, I don't think until next year. In fact, in order to test all this stuff, by the way, you create this stuff and it shows up in shortcuts, and you test it by running shortcuts, because there's not, there's
that makes sense.
So that is as a bonus, though, that means if you do this work, it's still useful to people even today.
It'll still come through, which is part of the point.
So as we're running out of time here, let's move on. I think we've talked about the vibes. Dub. I think we did good talk there. But what are some of our top picks? And these don't have to be anything. They don't have to be the most useful things for us. They don't have to be something that is universally applicable. Like, what do we think was cool talks? Who wants to go first?
All right, I'll go first.
Okay.
So one of the things that I actually thought was kind of cool was the translation API, Meet the Translation API, where it's kind of like I think it existed before, but it never was really fully fleshed out. But basically, it just allows it's not available just yet because it's all a part. I think it's all a part of the AI or Apple Intelligence story. But it allows you to like provide Apple like some text or a batch of text, and for which then Apple will go and translate it for you in whatever specific language you want it to translate to. And the setup is actually kind of fun. And it's kind of easy. So I'm looking forward to like testing that idea out. So like if you have like something where people post stuff and you want to allow the user to translate that on the fly,
that's cool. I want to do translation. Cool. I like that. That's not Apple Intelligence stuff, or is it?
I think it is in a sort of like because you have to be in a broad sense, because you have to if you don't have the language, for example, installed, you have to download it, because it's using a lot of the translation apps APIs.
Because we already had this. It's just making better APIs for the translation stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So you can do batches. You can do like a series of like texts. So like it can kind of come in asynchronously.
Nice.
So you can do a variety of different things where you can translate it in different languages, in a variety of different languages, Chinese, Japanese, all Spanish,
does it work with audio?
The favorites.
Just text?
It can, yeah.
Oh, it can work with audio?
I think so. Oh, that's a good question. Actually, I don't think it can. No, I don't think I can. I don't think you would have to do a generic like speech to text thing where you convert it into a text and then send it. And because
what I want is a multimodal thing. I want to be able to just like have someone speak to me and have it translate.
Yeah, technically it would be able to do that. I guess it depends on how well the modern speak to text translate. Then the speech to text would do it and then translate it then send that text to the translate.
Or the other way, if I want to know how to say something, like I want an app. I want an anime translator app. So when I'm watching my subtitled anime, I can have the app give me a different translation, so I can know whether the translators are messing with me. Because sometimes they do. I know it. I see it. Sometimes you guys translate things for your own weird reasons and don't do that. So
I guess it's because of like, if in the case, like it's weird because like there's the Japanese translation. Like I saw this with Godzilla -1 recently, where they say it, but if you don't pick the right subtitle version, like it has to be like Japanese English or something like that, some weird like version of that. It will say it in the American dub version, like the American dubbed,
right? Which
they're always trying to match the lips.
Yeah, so what I mean is like translations can vary. Like there's a room for, so that'd be cool to just have another option. And I just want an app that's called like Anime Translator. I just think it's cool.
Yeah,
these ideas are worth $- because you're going to invest a lot of time building them and no one will download it.
Exactly.
You're welcome.
There's Demystifying SwiftUI Container, which I thought is a great way of like creating your own sort of custom list.
That's the one with the corkboard UI.
Yeah. So like if you wanted to do something that's a little more custom than say like a generic list view, that actually would be a good option. Yeah. The other one is I'm just gonna like design great visionOS apps. I thought that was actually kind of interesting, just a broad sense. I'm just going to go right past that. And then there are two that I liked that were around the animation. So enhance your UI animation in transition and creating custom visual effects with SwiftUI. I think they kind of go hand in hand into building sort of next generation experiences. I think for designers, there's sort of like we've gone from sort of wireframe designs, which still are valid, but now you almost have to become a motion designer.
Wow.
So because like a lot of this stuff is going to require you to like have a sense of like maybe to give the app more life and feel. You're basically making like much more of it. There's much more moving elements that you would normally you wouldn't have to deal with, but now you can do so. Understanding like where the puck is going in that sense, Apple's encouraging you to like push the boundaries of all your crazy gradients, can now animate all your crazy all your effects of zooming in, zooming out, and morphing shapes. You can do that. Like, these are things that if you want your apps to be more expressive and more immersive, this next year or two is going to be that year where we're going to really push those designs further than most people, even designers, are comfortable with. So I look forward to that. So those are the ones that I'm interested in, or I think are interesting.
Okay, well, that's a lot. I didn't know we're going that many, so
yeah, we can condense it, I guess.
But I have some. Then I will do. I'll say the one everybody should watch is Migrate Your App to Swift 6. That one is a great refactoring walkthrough and discussion of Swift concurrency issues. And it is basically a follow-up from a 2021 WW video called Swift Concurrency Update a Sample App. So you might want to go back and see that one first, because that one is more focused on Swift concurrency changes. And then that same app is used in the Swift 6 one, and the changes made in 2021 helped make it easier in this one. But he goes into, what's really nice about both these videos, but it goes into an actual refactoring session where you could see tactics and strategies for you to convert your existing app to full concurrency support and then Swift 6 support, and do it in a piecemeal way. Do it in ways where you're isolating your changes as best you can. And he talks about doing that and the importance of doing that. And very, very good talk. I highly recommend this one and the 2021 version. I would also say Xcode Essentials. I think I talked about this before, like last week. That was a wonderful talk, because Xcode is a very complicated program, and there's probably some features you don't know about, you're not aware of. And that one, I learned a lot, actually, from the Xcode Essentials talk. And it's great for anyone who's new, especially to Xcode, or me, who just wanted to learn why the damn tabs work the way they do. I finally understand.
Oh, I need to check that one out.
Yeah. And
I'm confused.
I have I think I mentioned this, that bring your app's core features to users with app intents. We were talking about that one. That one is a good one for doing the obviously for learning about the core concepts about app intents, which I didn't really know because I hadn't used them before. And then there's some follow-on talks for that. And then the one, though, that I thought was kind of the most fun in some ways talk I watched was Meet the Next Generation of CarPlay Architecture. And let me tell you why. This has nothing to do with me. I am not going to this has nothing to do probably with anyone of us except for maybe our friends who work at Ford. Like maybe, I don't even know if Ford's doing this, because all these companies seem to be saying they don't want to do CarPlay in the future. I don't know. But what's cool about it is it goes into, at least at a high level, how this would work. How does CarPlay, or next generation CarPlay anyway, integrate with the systems of a car? It's kind of cool because there's multiple layers, and a lot of it is like, I guess, video signals kind of being transmitted around. It's kind of wild when you think about it, how and Apple goes and explains the architecture and how the CarPlay stuff will integrate with the stuff from the car manufacturers, and where those lines are, and yet how they all kind of integrate together. Like, a lot of the stuff is, the UI is like directly created by the car manufacturer. Some of it's not, and it mixes and matches in different places. There's even parts of the screen where it's like basically a hole cut out in the UI, and like that's coming from I think the car manufacturer, and like the stuff around it is like from Apple. It's kind of cool how it's all integrated together. And I enjoyed watching that just for that reason. And also, it gives you a glimpse of what we will never have, because this is obviously what was left over from the car program that Apple, gave up on. So, worth watching to see a glimpse of what will never be, and what will hopefully come to at least some of our vehicles, like, I don't know how many years from now, because I still don't have CarPlay in my ancient car, so whatever.
We're not even going to talk about my ancient car. So.
Yeah, yours even older. So, Aaron, do you have any picks?
Yeah, probably not another one that's like not relevant to too many people, but AccessorySetupKit.
Oh yes,
that's cool.
Yes, yes.
It gives you some of that like pairing magic that AirPods have for accessories that aren't UWB. They don't have an ultra wideband chip in it, so you can go with Wi-Fi or Bluetooth accessories. Get like hopefully a more seamless pairing experience that pops up from the bottom when you get close to the device. So,
we have to test that out. That's going to be
that
would be pretty cool.
That is cool. Hardware manufacturers rejoice.
Yeah, and not entirely related. Also, embedded Swift. I want to check that out. So all stuff that requires hardware.
Embedded Swift, because Swift is the future and will replace C++.
Look, man, I don't know how much full of BS that is or not, but there are other languages that are competitors to C++. I mean, it's
I should check just to see like if he said that with a straight face, like how straight a face that was.
Why not? Why not?
Was there a smirk? Was there like an eye roll or something, like some indication to be like, okay, help?
Part of the Apple saying Swift all the things is the embedded Swift, the Swift on the server. We didn't really go into this stuff, but and there was I do get the sensation, and we talked about this thing last week about the Swift Lang organization on GitHub, that Apple is pushing Swift more as a language that's not just for app development, which is about time, because they said that's what they wanted the language to be, but then they didn't seem to put much energy into pushing it that way. And now I think the language has matured enough that I can almost believe it could be a competitor to C++ in some circumstances. I don't know. I don't do a lot of C++. I haven't done any C++ since college, so I don't know what the heck current C++ is like. But anything is better, though, than what I remember of C++. So I would give Swift a try. I'd give Rust a try before I did, anything else. So I think it would be cool if Swift got some more purchase in the developer world outside of Apple ecosystem development, because it really is, as I said before, I don't hate the language anymore. I actually like it now, and it is matured to a point where I prefer writing in Swift to pretty much any other language that I've had to deal with in like last several years. It's actually very, very nice. Has a lot of good design concepts. Like if it could be used in place of other languages that are less safe, for concurrency and stuff, then yeah, why not? I think that'd be cool.
Any other ones, Aaron? Or are those the two?
There was a couple ones. I don't know if we talked about it on like game development, like it's like advanced games on Apple platforms, and then porting your games to Apple platforms.
So
we're still pushing.
That one's actually pretty good. Yeah, for you gaming nerds, game development nerd. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. I didn't watch that one. I think I saw the one from like when they first, like last year when they did like the game porting engine, but they have an updated one.
Right.
So maybe we'll get some actual games on our Macs.
I mean, it's kind of happening in a weird way. It's very like under the surface.
It's
but like
we're entering like okay. So like the Switch is end of life. Nintendo has announced. They're going to announce, I think, this year, at the end of the year or something, what the next console is going to be. So, like, next year, we can expect probably a new Switch. I think it's probably sometime, maybe not till late. The other consoles are, like, mid, probably, because they're going, like, 8 years now. Last time I bought a console, I remember it being, like, 3 years or 4 years between revisions. Like, that was how long ago it was. So, now they're, like, real long. Anyway, so we're in this situation where, and then mobile gaming is huge. I wonder if this is maybe on the outside chance that we could actually see more decent gaming on Apple platforms because they have the right mix of hardware and software, and kind of, I don't know, undermining the traditional consoles in a lot of ways. Not entirely, but like being competitive. Like we've always talked about how they theoretically could be more competitive with the consoles. We have a lot of handheld consoles now that are very powerful. I think that the whole gaming space has evolved, and just like I blinked, and it's like, because I'm not a gamer, but it just seems like the whole thing's changed. There's a bunch of handheld consoles that do Steam and all this kind of stuff. I think the challenge Apple's going to have is, even if they have the hardware, even if they have the porting software, is that people want to access like Steam or one of these other collections of games, and so they have to be really willing to make that work. And I don't see Apple doing that, right? like on the Mac you could do Steam, but I mean, I wonder about on iOS, iPad.
I think for like the Steam, what's the portable? The Steam
Deck is, and there's other competitors, that
one of the interesting things about the Steam Deck, I think, forces their developers, and and they do a good amount. They do assist a good amount on the conversion part of it. Is the port to Linux,
right?
The games to Linux. So
because it is all Linux, Linux operating systems on Linux operating system.
Yes. So from that standpoint, like that's pretty cool, right?
We also
it's
yeah.
I mean, it bears to reason, like, oh well, if if Apple say takes their game porting toolkit, and says, you know what, just do it on ours, and maybe we'll have our own version of like a variation of that for iPhone and iPad, where you just, as long as you convert fine. And I suspect like that's what a lot of the game developers that are currently pushing their games out on the Mac are doing. They're just like, it's like, we're just doing a basic port. We're not even doing any metal shader conversions, which actually would have helped the performance even more. We're just doing a straight port.
Well, we also have we also have finally decent ARM chips, competitive ARM chips on the Windows side. Sure. And Windows is a big gaming thing, so there's more reason to think that games are going to be ported for the architectures that Apple is already, invested in for years. So there is a chance. Well, I still think it kind of comes down to a lot of the marketplace. I don't know what the situation is with, like, you can do Steam on Mac OS, right? But you can't do it on iPad.
Yeah.
Right?
No.
So I feel like
maybe they have like a bespoke section that are iPad specific, but no.
I don't know. I don't know how it works. I'm pretty sure you can't though. I don't know. Apple needs to be more open, I think, to those game marketplaces. And it seems like they're maybe tiptoeing towards that. I don't know. I'm not in the gaming space.
Like the Game Pass is a good example of like streaming, for example, is like,
so that works.
As a streaming. The way that can work for them. Or that can work as like, okay, here's a platform. Here's a way we can get lots of games that are like high end, but not have to, like, put a lot of development work into it.
I guess what I'm saying is, I think we're going to see a lot more cross-pollination in games across all the different devices that are available, different consoles, PCs, Macs, because it's too expensive to make these things, and the marketplace is getting fragmented. Except for Nintendo. Nintendo's just going to do its own thing because Nintendo makes awesome games that are innovative and for its own platform, and it doesn't really care too much about the AAA games. They'll port them, but they don't care.
They know they can charge $60 for an Animal Crossing game or a Pokemon game.
Nintendo is awesome. I don't have any problems. I have problems now. Nintendo is so awesome. Apparently, that their 7-year-old Switch system gets ports of AAA games that have no business running on that. They don't look that great. No, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter because apparently there's enough people that buy it to make it worthwhile doing all that work. I can't imagine the amount of effort involved in getting like Doom games to run on the Switch. I like the modern ones. I don't know how they did it, but it's incredible. And so Nintendo's an outlier. We'll see what they do, but everybody else is going to be sharing games. I don't think we're going to see like a new Mario game, like official Mario game on Steam, but okay.
All right. So let's call it a day.
It's extra long episode here.
Extra long overtime here, but you can learn more about Philly Cocoa at phillycocoa.org. There you'll find links to our Slack group, meetup schedule, and contact info. If you're feeling generous, leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever your podcast platform of choice is. And please share us with all your developer friends. And one more thing, more programmer dad jokes from the Programmer Dad Jokes Reddit. As a programmer, I hate golfing. I keep hitting other players. I am stuck in a for loop. Oh, it gets better.
Oh, man. I like that one.
What tavern does Microsoft and Apple IT managers like?
What?
The vendor lock-in.
Oh,
Aaron, don't shake your head. Don't shake your head. You know that was horrible.
That was terrible. I love it.
All right, and last one. Why is a toddler at a playground like a boomer trying to print from a browser tab?
What?
They both don't know how to control P in the sandbox.
It's terrible. I only half get that one. What the hell?
Till next time.
Oh my God.
Good luck on your own developer journey. We will cheer for you always.
AI, all the things, I guess.